All right, we are now recording. We've gone over the ground rules. We're going to start with introductions of the candidates. These are in alphabetical order. So Ian Root, you have the floor. 1 minute. Introduce yourself, please.
Hello, am I heard now?
You are.
Great, thank you, thank you. I'd like to thank the Madisonian, thank you, Corey, for having this candidates forum. Thank the people of Madison County who read the Madisonian, and I hope everybody learns from this experience. My name is Ian Root. I was born and raised in New York City. I went to college in a free college that was sponsored by New York City. They did it for generations. It didn't cost me anything, and it was the only way that I could, or my parents could afford to send me to college. And that is one of my platforms, that there should be free public university or college for anybody in Montana. I moved away from New York City. I moved all over the Northeast and Idaho, Montana, following my wife's career. And we landed in Ennis 12 years ago, and we are stopping.
I can't hear you, Corey, but or Curtis, but I think
Sorry.
I'm supposed to start. Yeah, that's all right. Hey, thank you guys in the Madisonian for hosting. Appreciate it. Thanks all the people for participating online for the Zoom conference that we're all extremely learning to do here in this new world. A little bit about myself. Grew up south of Twin Bridges on the family ranch. Went to school in Twin Bridges. Attended Montana State University, graduated there in agriculture education. Spent 4 or 5 years teaching junior high and high school ag. Was in Billings for a short period of time, ran the Nile Stock Show, and about 33, 34 years ago, returned back to my hometown and started working at the bank, and did that for the last 33 years. Been married for 31 years to Mary Beth, and have 2 sons, Robert and Michael, and that's a little bit about my background.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Those are our 2 candidates for House District 71, Ian Root and Ken Walsh. Next, we'll meet our county commissioners. First up is Mr. Dan Allahnds. Mr. Allahnds, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. I'm not going to give a whole big history lesson on my family. I guess I feel we're pretty well known between Allahnds Excavation and Allahnds Auto Clinic and my wife at the dentist office and that. But one thing that I have to clarify today, I was misquoted by my opponent in the Madisonian, where he's talking about the chief administrative officer, and where he quotes me as saying, we were told we were doing it wrong and we did it anyway. Now, I've told Mr. Thompson 4 or 5 times that he was misquoting me on that. And he says at the bottom of that, I haven't found out who told them they were doing it wrong. That is a misquote. I want that made. Anybody that knows me knows I would not say something like that and then go ahead and do it anyway if it was wrong. Now, the exact quote that I told Mr. Thompson, because this needs to be clarified because it's basically liable, is our district deputy county attorney told us we didn't do anything wrong, but we could have done it better. And yes, we could have done it better. But for him to misquote me, I want to clear that up, get the facts. And after looking and researching for a year, not being able to find out who told us we were doing it wrong, probably means nobody told us that. So go on to Mr. Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allahnds. Also running for county commissioner is Mr. Eli Thompson. Mr. Thompson, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I guess I've been around probably as long as Dan has been, so I will probably just address his saying I misquoted him. I will tell him that if he remembers back to when he quoted that there was somebody with us when I came off with that, when that quote came up. So I guess if it's something for a possibility of a liability, we're liable, I guess, bring it on, because there is a witness. And I'll turn it back to you folks. I guess we're getting off with a good start for maybe a Biden and Trump deal. Hopefully not.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. I appreciate that. All right. We will move on to our first rounds of questions. These ones are for you to have an opportunity to give us a synopsis of your platform. Question number one is first going to go to Mr. Walsh, House District 71 candidate. Mr. Walsh, please tell us why you are running for this office.
Thanks, Curtis. Hey,
Sir, you have 2 minutes, Mr. Walsh.
I'm running for the office to serve and give back to the community. We've lived here for a long time, and the community's been done well to us. We've gotten good education for our children, and we've had great times here and great relationships. So I look forward to that challenge and want to be a part of the continued success of Madison County. I don't have a strong advocacy or being mad at anything. I just want government to be strong. I want it to be efficient, and I want it to be accountable. We don't necessarily need new laws. I think we just need to look back and see what laws exist, and are they really needed, and what's the cost benefit. Government should stimulate growth and entrepreneurship and to help people be successful. We don't need to create roadblocks. We need to help education. We need to have strong recreation. We need to have great natural resources. But at the end of the day, we just need to be creative. Throwing dollars at the issues aren't necessarily always the answer. So I think that especially with going forward with the coronavirus and those type of things, we need to think out of the box and look for solutions to make our government more like the people want. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Next, we will hear from House District 71 candidate Ian Root. Ian Root. I apologize. Mr. Root, please tell us why you are running for this office.
I'm running, Curtis and Corey, and the people of Madison County, because the democracy that we have come to accept for 230 years is in danger. The Trump group in Washington is a dictatorship. We need to throw out these people who are putting our Constitution and our normality that we've come to accept in jeopardy. I am challenging Ken Walsh and the other candidates to denounce the Trump dictator, the mobster, who is running a cult of personality. They are not Republicans. Republicans believe in the Constitution. These guys in Washington just are in it for power. They do not believe in the Constitution. Do you, my opponent and these gentlemen running for commissioner, do you believe that there's going to be a violent overthrow of the government? If Trump loses, he said he is not committed to a peaceful transition of power. How can you guys accept that? You must denounce this guy. He is a traitor. He accepted help from the Russians to win his election, and he's doing it again in 2020. I challenge you again to renounce your positions in support of him and stop wrapping yourselves in the blanket of corruption and treason. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Root. Next, we will hear from our county commissioner candidates. First, we'll go to Eli Thompson. Mr. Thompson, please tell us why you are running for this office.
Well, I'm running for it because I'm kind of unsatisfied with the way the commissioners have been running things up there. It seems like they're not very transparent and open. A couple issues come up going back to just this last year in January, the hiring of a nursing home administrator to take care of. Now that what they're doing is they're training having two nursing home administrators in training, which is all fine and well. But the way that they acquired that nursing home administrator is January 14th, they had told the chief administrative officer to get some proposals and costs and put it on the next agenda. 2 days later, the chief administrator officer had signed a contract with this individual from a nursing home company. And then February 19th, they had another meeting that was saying that it shouldn't have been done that way. And I maintain they're not doing things the way it should be done up there. They're just not following the outline for hiring up there. We've got a timely manner of trying to get things done. People get a hold of the commissioners on different issues. There's lots of issues happening with the courthouses, and there's also road issues, and it just gets kicked down the road. They're not getting taken care of. I think there's no follow through. We need to have better follow through, and I think that I can get in there and maybe to push it along, maybe help it work. We'll give it back to Dan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thompson. All right, next we will hear from Commissioner candidate Dan Allahnds, incumbent Commissioner Dan Allahnds. Mr. Allahnds, please tell us why you are running for this office.
Unmuted now? Okay. Well, I'm running for this office because I feel in the past 4 years, we've done a pretty good job. You know, when I ran to be a county commissioner, I filed right as soon as I had a lot of people ask me to, and I attended almost probably 8.5, 9 months of meetings before I was actually successful in November and sworn in December. So I had a pretty good idea what was going on in the county. I've seen a lot of things that Mr. Thompson's talking about. Well, we're addressing the issues. The courthouse, as far as making it ADA compliant, we've researched that pretty much. We could spend $3 million to put an elevator in there in the bathroom, but that doesn't solve the issue of us not having a jail and a sheriff's office. I'm an open-minded person, and, do we do things right all the time? No, we certainly don't. And I'll admit when we don't, but like I said, I attended a lot of meetings and I knew what I was getting into, and I was pretty well aware of the issues before I was sworn in. You can check back in the minutes and see how many meetings I was at. I'm very dedicated. I've missed a few meetings here the last month and a half due to a personal issue, a surgery. But up until then, in the last 4 years, I bet I've missed 3 or 4 meetings. Very dedicated to it. I find facts, I read the statutes, and one thing that I'll go back to Eli saying, yep, it takes government a long time to get stuff done, just the way it is, and it still drives me nuts, but that's the way it is, and we spin our wheels a lot, but that's just the wheels of government, And I do have the business background in private business for almost 40 years, over 40 years. I ran on a strict budget. In fact, my ex-banker's one of the candidates, Mr. Walsh. I don't know how we're doing on timeline, but I have the business experience. I know how to run on a tight budget. I think I work well with the other commissioners, and other than the little bit earlier on this meeting, I've tried to keep my campaign pretty clean. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allahnds. We will be moving on to another question about your platforms. On this particular question, you'll have 3 minutes to respond. So this one will first be addressed to District 71 candidates. First, Ian Root, if you would please tell us what are the top 3 issues you think our district faces today? You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir. I wore this mask to point out that the county commissioners and the state legislatures have to depoliticize mask wearing. Washington has politicized it as well as they've politicized everything else in our lives. They've allowed for white supremacy. They've allowed for misogyny. This is wrong. Masks should be mandatory. Another part of my platform is to increase the minimum wage. People in Madison County and throughout our district do not make enough money to live. We need to increase the minimum wage. We need to focus on renewable energy. Northwestern Energy is not interested in renewable energy. We need to force them to encourage solar energy, to encourage wind energy. As everybody knows in Madison County, we have plenty of wind. We can take advantage of that and stop using fossil fuels to generate electricity, to heat our houses. We need renewable energy. I also want to have free daycare for working families so that their salaries don't get eaten up by paying for daycare for their young children. I believe, as I mentioned before, that higher education should be free as well, public higher education. I think we should increase teacher salaries because this COVID has shown how important teachers are. In that context, COVID also has shown that companies have not given enough sick days to people. People have to stay home when they're sick. If they go to work when they're sick, they give their sickness to other people. Getting back to my previous statements about my opponent wrapping himself in the corruption of Washington, silence is complicity. And if you are silent, that means you support what is going on in the dictatorship, in the traitorous behavior of Trump and his gang. This is wrong. You should be speaking out against it. You should be denouncing it, putting country over party. If you are silent, you are complicit.
Thank you, Mr. Root. Next, we will move on to Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, what are the top 3 issues you think your district faces today? You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I think that I've laid this out pretty well, but I think the natural resource industries, including ag, mining, timber, we need to work and try to create value-added products. We need to try to stimulate those economies. One thing that we have seen here recently because of the pandemic is that we're getting packing plants up and running, which is great. that will help our ag economy. Need to remove barriers to utilize our natural resources of timber. We've seen what happens if you don't manage the timber well. So we need to be proactive in that. We need to make sure that we do mining, but mining needs to be done environmentally sound. We need those precious metals to continue to expand our economy. The recreation industry that thrives on the natural resources, which are, of course, the water, the public lands, those type of things, we need to monitor and make sure that we have those ongoing and successful. And agree with Mr. Root, education and needs to be supported. Again, it's not always dollars that make for success. We also need to make sure that our rules and regulations allow teachers and schools locally to be creative and make sure that they can do the things that they need to do. And we need to focus on vocational education. We need trade people and skilled jobs to keep our economy going. And finally, healthcare. We're very aware of what healthcare and how important it is in our communities. We're fortunate we have two great critical access hospitals here. I support Medicare expansion. I'd like to make it permanent. That won't come up for a while, but we need to make sure that we take care of both physical and mental health. So thank you, and we need to work on those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. We will now move on to the county commissioners. We will start with Mr. Allahnds. Please tell us, sir, what are the top 3 issues you think that your district faces today? You have 3 minutes for this.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Dan, I think that you muted yourself again. Let me get you set up.
I'm off now.
All right, we can hear you now. We'll start 3
Okay.
minutes.
Well, I don't know if there's just 3 issues. One of the biggest ones that we probably got is, our land use planning. It's becoming more and more important every day with the amount of people that are moving in here. And we want to be sure that we plan for the future so we don't end up with a mess. One thing that we do in Madison County, which we're gaining on by leaps and bounds, is our infrastructure as far as our bridges. Since I've been a county commissioner, we replaced the Luray Bridge, the Blaine Springs Bridge, Barney Bridge, and just finished on the Gim Bridge roads and that. One of the things that we're going to have to really look into, because we're going to have it, is going to be our Law and Justice Center or our jail. Because right now, we have not even a 72-hour holding facility because of the issues with the courthouse. And the areas, whether it be Gallatin County, Broadwater, or Boulder, their jails are filling up because as we all grow, more bad people seem to show up. Nursing homes, which was touched on a little bit ago, and a lot of, information out about those. Yes, we hired a nursing home administrator, a contractor to take care of our nursing homes. Things that people need to understand on that is the voters want these nursing homes. They're very generous and voted for a 17 mil permanent mill levy. When we had an interim administrator and he resigned, we don't have time to advertise for 3 or 4 months. We have to have a licensed administrator in our nursing homes at all times, or they were in jeopardy of getting closed. So there we go, whether we did it exactly right or not, but it's there. I'll agree with Kenny. We need to take care of our natural resources, our ranchers, our miners. Another thing that's a big issue in Madison County is housing. We have to somehow figure out a way to get affordable housing for these folks, because so many homes that were rented at one time are now Airbnbs and that. Another issue that we have that we're working on diligently right now is our Ruby and Madison side ambulance service, trying to figure out how we're going to keep those going and fund them. And those are issues that are really important, and along a lot of others, but those are about 5 of them. Thank you. I don't want to go over on my time.
Thank you, sir. Next, we will hear from Mr. Thompson. You'll have 3 minutes, sir, to tell us what you think are the top 3 issues that our district faces today.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, Dan pretty well covered a lot of the issues that I would also had. One thing that I would like to put a lot more of a really positive thought that needs to be done is on the courthouse, the old courthouse. It's been sitting there and it's been being neglected, and if it gets neglected much longer, it will be falling in because it needs the foundation underneath to be stabilized and taken care of. And so I'm hoping that something will start happening on that sooner than later. I think Dan mentioned a little bit about the nursing home issue that I brought up and several other people have brought up. And it's just, there's a way of hiring people. There's guidelines that are out there through the state. They've been used before for a long time, and their failure to follow these guidelines is just not the right way that things should be done. So let's do it right. Another issue that, courthouse, nursing homes, all the housing and everything Dan's mentioned. Another one that he didn't mention that I brought up quite a little bit is the county roads and everything. Petition county roads especially. These roads, a lot of these roads were petitioned back in the late 1800s. And they're petition county roads. Granted, they may not be used all the time, and they may not be getting that much use, but until they are petition closed or closed by a court action of the court, then they are still a county road. And if people want to take and shut them down, they need to go through the paperwork, the proper paperwork to get them shut down. You petition them open, you also then petition them closed. You need to change the road. This has been happening quite a little bit in our research. I'm on the road review committee. Our research is that there's a lot of these roads have been changed just by good old buddy stuff. He knows the commissioner, and the commissioner goes and tells him, yeah, go ahead and take and put it there. Well, that doesn't help those of us that need to chase it and find out where it was originally and to follow it through. We've got like 3 roads right now that we've basically done the research on, turned them over to the commissioners, and the commissioners are just sitting on them. There's still locks on them. They're still impassable. This stuff, it isn't going to get any easier to do later on. Let's get it taken care of now. With that, I don't know. I don't have a timer here, but I guess it's a question.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. All right, candidates, we are going to move into the Q&A section of this forum. Again, these questions are derived from your constituency, from Madisonian readers and Madison County residents. Some of them have multiple components to each question. I'll be happy to repeat the question at any time. Looking at some of these questions, might be a good idea to have a pen and paper handy because there are several components of it. But I will repeat it as needed, so just let me know. You'll have 2 minutes to answer each of these questions. So we will get right into it. Question number 1, and I have lost my order here. So this first question is going to go to...
It's FHD.
Yes, of course. This first question is going to go to Mr. Walsh. All right, for House District 71. The question is, agriculture is a leading industry in your district. Over the past 15 years, several state and federal laws have changed country of origin labeling laws. Would you support the Montana country of origin Labeling Act? And do you think Madison County producers could benefit from the more stringent country of origin labeling, and why?
Sure. This is an issue that's been beat around for 15, 20 years, maybe even longer than that. Yeah, I think the labeling or the COOL Act is important. And I think it would be great if even we had it down to Montana and then also US. We just have to make sure that we do it right and that it's cost effective. Because I do think people want to buy US products. And I think they also want to buy Montana products. And so I think there would be a great marketing advantage if we did that. And I think I would support that, you know, as long as there wasn't any unintended consequences that caused extra cost to the producer to get that labeling on there. And what I mean by that we don't have to verify sources and do a lot of bureaucracy. We need to have good things without the bureaucracy that is associated with it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, sir. Next for Mr. Root. I'll repeat the question. Agriculture is a leading industry in your district. Over the past 15 years, several state and federal laws have changed country of origin labeling laws. Would you support the Montana Country of Origin Labeling Act? And do you think Madison County producers could benefit from the more stringent country of origin labeling, and why? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I do support, I agree with Mr. Walsh. I do support the act, though I haven't read the whole thing. But when you have new laws like that, you will incur bureaucracy because things have to be checked. Things have to be verified that whatever product is being marketed as being in Montana is really in Montana. And there are so many products that are international and then assembled in Montana. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that is it manufactured in Montana? Does it come from Montana? There are a lot of questions that the bureaucracy would straighten out. I also would support labeling by county. So like the beer bottles, the micro brews that say they come from Belt, Montana or Ennis, Montana. That would be great if they said what town, what county, no matter what the product was. So in summation, I do support the act.
Thank you, Mr. Root. Next question will be directed to our commissioner candidates. The first to respond will be Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, Southwest Montana is growing. As it continues to grow, how will Madison County's infrastructure need to adjust? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Found the mute button and everything. Well, yes, I think Southwest Montana, as much as those of us that have lived here all of our lives, hate to see it happen, but it is undoubtedly going to grow. And everything else is going to have to grow with it. We are going to have more law enforcement. All the issues we've been talking about previously, we're going to have to address. An awful lot of the addressing should go towards the handling of how the zoning and everything needs to be done. I think we need to get probably into where there is zoning that is enforceable, because a lot of zoning around Madison County is not adhered to. I don't even know whether there's any zoning other than the towns and everything, but it's been addressed also, the ambulance through the hospitals and that. I think that's something that we need to get into to help out whichever way it goes. It looks like the county's wanting to go pretty much with ambulance services through the hospitals. I've attended one meeting, haven't been able to attend any more of them, but will as time goes on, especially if I get elected to this office. So it's just, it's growing, we're growing, and we're going to continue to grow unless COVID really takes over and ends up shortening a lot of people's lives that don't plan on it. Hopefully that won't happen, but I think we'll address the issues as they come up. I'd like to be there helping address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, we will hear from Mr. Allahnds. Mr. Allahnds, Southwest Montana is growing. As it continues to grow, how will Madison County's infrastructure need to adjust? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, I'm on now. Well, yeah, you know, as I kind of addressed before, one of the things that we really are going to have to do is do our land use planning very wisely. And our infrastructure, you know, has to be that way. I was at a meeting last night for the town of Sheridan. You know, they're going to, in the next couple of years, do a redo their growth policy, trying to figure out how they're going to do it. Because with more people moving in, you know, we're, especially in the town, Sheridan has a tougher time growing because of their water issues and that. I think they've got that kind of handled, but they need this growth plan, you know, to be revised so they can figure out what to do it. Not super familiar with Twin Bridges, but Ennis and everyone is going to have to, you know, do that land use planning. With, as said before, the more people that move in, the more services are required. Housing, that's a big issue. I don't know what we're going to do there. I mean, we want to keep our young people here, and with jobs that are here and the people that are moving in, price of land getting so high, trying to find some, you know, people who invest. We restarted our housing board to try and find out some things, got good people on it, but it's just people don't want to invest in housing, so it's a tough deal. I guess, like I say, we're going to have to take care of our natural resources, the ranchers and the miners, because as more people move in, it puts more pressure on those folks because people want to move here because it's the way it is. But once they get here, they seem to always want to change it to the way it was. And we're going to have to expand our justice center and our jail because pretty soon we're going to run out of places to go. And we've got to have them there right now. It's a very big issue with the growth and the people coming in. We have a average of 10 prisoners incarcerated either in Broadwater, Boulder, or Gallatin County on average. So our Law and Justice Center is going to have at least probably double that amount of jail space to accommodate the future, and probably more than that. Guess that's land use planning and the strain it's going to put on our infrastructure. Things we'll all have to address. Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you, sir. To the guests and voters on here, we have 4 questions left that are pre-made. We are going to ask all 4 of those. But at this time, it is exactly 6:15. If you would like to start submitting questions, I will address them in the order that they are received, and only if they are addressed to me privately. When you click on the chat, find my name, moderator Curtis Koenig, send your questions to me privately, and those are the ones that we will present to the candidates. Please indicate if you would like the commissioner candidates to address this question, House District 71 candidates to address this question, or all of the above. And we'll get to as many as we can. Thank you. Moving on to our next question. This is House District 71 questions. First, we will hear from Mr. Root. Mr. Root, if elected, how would you communicate with your constituency? How would you communicate with your constituency? Sorry, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, wait, I'm not sure I heard the whole question. Is it how would I communicate with my constituency?
That is correct.
I believe that I could put letters to the editor in the Madisonian. They'll let me do that once I'm not a candidate. if I'm in office. I would have a phone number that people can contact me, whether I'm in Helena or home. I have email, rootformontana.com. It also has a question button. I think that I could respond to letters, though that may be very Luddite of me to accept that that there would be people writing. There are numerous ways to communicate. It's a good question because getting out my positions during this candidacy period has been difficult. But I appreciate you having these candidate forums, and maybe once there is an election decision, that every once in a while, if you ran a representative town hall, maybe I can answer questions that way. That's just an idea. Madisonian is an important part of the fabric of the county, and they could definitely hold one of those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, Mr. Walsh, if you would comment on this. If elected, how would you communicate with your constituency? You have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Curtis. Yeah, I'm going to slip back to the first question just on the ag and the cool, just because I forgot something. But I just wanted to comment that we talk about labeling, but I think that we also talked about value added earlier, and just a shout out to Ruby Valley Meats that's now raising and processing and selling beef right here in Madison County. So I think we don't have to worry about labeling it. We know where it comes from, and you can buy right here locally. So that, if we could do that more of that, that would be great. As far as communication, the best communication is one-on-one, and sometimes we cover a lot of area, so that's difficult to do. And with the Corona pandemic, we've struggled to get out and communicate the way that I would like to communicate. So then we rely on the print, which is of course the Madisonian and those other publications, social media, which I'm beginning to learn a little bit more about, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or those type of things. And then email is one that I'm very familiar with and use it on a regular basis. Having a web page, which I do have, Walsh for Montana. And then obviously the phone, which we can verbally or text messages or get emails that way. So I think it's important that we do communicate, and I would just encourage anybody, and fact is that I've gotten numerous phone calls and emails through my solicitation and campaigning, I guess. And one thing I always try to do, and even when I worked, you don't leave the day until you return every phone call or every email. So I work hard at it, and I think that's important, and that's what I strive to do.
Thank you very much, sir. This next question is directed to our commissioner candidates. We will start with Mr. Allahnds. Sir, if elected, how would you improve morale among your employees?
Well, I honestly believe that most of our employees have good morale. I mean, we try to give the cost of living increase at our annual compensation meeting every year, have good benefit packages, and I guess it's just trying to communicate with them. Sometimes that, I guess I give kudos to all of our county employees that in various departments. They do an excellent job, and it makes our jobs a lot easier. I guess, incentivize them a little bit and you thank them for what they're doing. And that's basically how you improve morale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson, if elected, how would you improve morale among your employees?
There we are. Well, kind of what Dan talked about. I think that all helps morale. What would help, I think, most immediately is the being more transparent and open as to what is happening up in the courthouse. That is what's been a lot of the problem here for the last few years. And it hasn't been improving. It seems to be getting worse. Hopefully that can be taken care of. They have a pretty good group up there. They get together, they bring lunches, they have birthday parties and everything. I think in many cases the morale is real good, but there are some places where they just are not consulted the way they should be consulted. There's a lot of expertise up in that courthouse. Some of those people have been working up there over 20 years, and I think it's kind of a kick to them in the shins when the commissioners do not even question them, ask them about something that's going to be happening. So I think that could happen a little bit more. They could go around, hit the departments up and get what they want, what their input is. And we'll let it go on to the next question.
All right, thank you very much. This next question is going to be addressed to all four candidates. We will begin with Mr. Walsh. You take the first stab at it. The question is this: based on a petition from the George Grant chapter of Trout Unlimited, the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has put out for public comment a regulation that would ban the use of boats for fishing on certain sections of the Madison. Due to the nature of the river, if anglers cannot use a boat for access, only the landowners would be able to fish where the river goes through private land. The question has three parts. The third part is for the legislative candidates only. For all of you, and Mr. Walsh in particular, do you oppose banning boats in sections of the Madison so that only private landowners can access those sections to fish? And would you be willing to write a letter to the Fish, Wildlife, and Park stating your opposition to the boat ban?
Oh, I didn't know if we're going to get all three questions at once or not. So, but yeah.
What I will do, Mr. Walsh, is I'll go through everybody with those two first parts, and then I'll come back to the legislative candidates for the last section.
All righty. Thank you. So I did participate and listen with the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks board when the two proposals came up. When they went through them, there was the sportsman group, and then there was the fishing outfitters group, and I can't remember the acronyms for both of them, but then the board decided that they would put both proposals out there. To be honest with you, I haven't read the final proposals that are out there. I see that they're out there, but I haven't gone to the website to look at them. I'm not sure that either one of those proposals answers all the questions. And probably all the questions never do get answered. So I'm going to kind of circumvent the answer and not provide a yes or no if we're going to ban boats or not, because I think there's probably more to it and we need to understand that. I do think, and I also spent some time with the Trout Unlimited people, and just so I could get a better understanding of their take on the deal, and actually had lunch with two of those people just to try to get more knowledge on it. So I think there's more information that needs to be gathered, and I think at the end of the day, we need to probably kind of come up with some kind of consensus of what's best for the Madison River, fish-wise and that resource, but also what's best for the economy of the in us and in the whole Madison Valley, because recreation is a big part. So I think I'm kind of slipping around answering the whole question because I probably can't give a good answer. But I think it's important, and I think we need to understand it. And what I'll do, if elected, is to follow up and solicit more input from the stakeholders, and then go to the Fish and Game and try to see what we can get done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Root, how much, that's a long question. You mean to repeat from the beginning?
I don't think so. I think I've got, Corey, you can start. Thank you. I will always support public access to a river over private property wants and desires. Public has to have access to that river, even if it goes through private property. So I would oppose a ban, or that's a very complicated way the question was worded. So whichever way I would vote yes or no, depending on which way the question was worded. But public access is my belief. I would write a letter to the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, but I would certainly need a little help composing it, because I am not a fishing person, but I support the river. The river is very important to Ennis's economy. The fishing guides, I have some friends who are fishing guides, and I would support them as well. But the river has to be protected. We have to have a long-range view of what's best for the river, what's best for Ennis's economy in the long run, not just short-term gains. So I would write a letter in support of my position. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We will now let the commissioners' candidates weigh in on that. First, Mr. Thompson. Long question. Would you like me to repeat all or part of it?
Okay, there we are. No, I think I kind of got it. I guess this is one of them things the people in front of me have pretty well covered, I think, an awful lot of it as to, and I agree all the way around. I hate to see the banning of boats for anybody on the river, but it's getting probably to the way that they do the salmon over in Idaho for people floating down through there. It'll probably end up coming to that, to where it's going to have to be limited. I would hate to see it happen, but it's probably going to happen. We can see what's happening between Bozeman and Norris. You can almost step from raft or inner tube to canoe at times there during the summer. And I'm quite sure the people that would like to fish it don't really like to see that happen. So I imagine that'll have to be, eventually, if we abuse our Mother Nature's things she leaves us to be able to enjoy ourselves with, we abuse it, it seems like. We're going to have to probably some way start controlling it. I'll let you go to the next person.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allahnds, same question, 2 minutes. Do you need me to repeat all or part of that question?
Well, I guess I'd have to agree with most everyone. I think it's kind of been answered as much as you probably can. I guess I always hate to see more regulations. Like I said, I'd have to agree with Kenny. I haven't really had a time to look at the, their preferred alternatives and their other alternatives to see what they need to do. It's going to be like, as other things we're going to have. I mean, recreation, we need to do this one wisely, because the Madison River is probably going to set a precedence on other rivers, because although the Ruby isn't floatable, but a lot of the other ones are, you're going to have to, you want to get it done right the first time, because it's going to set precedents. But with the influx of people that we have, it's not only going to be our rivers that are going to have problems, it's going to be all of our Forest Service roads and BLM roads. They're getting inundated with more people with the advent of side-by-sides and that. Hopefully the people can figure out a way to somehow police themselves and make it a fair and equitable, deal for everybody. Everybody's going to have to compromise a little. Compromise will get a lot of things done. But I guess we need to kind of see where the fish and game ends up with. And like I say, I need to read it a little more thoroughly and understand all of their alternatives and what their ultimate plan is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we will go to the third part of the question that is related to Madison stream access. First, I'll ask Mr. Root. And also, Ian, if you would please, at the start of your speech, lean forward a little bit just so that everyone can hear you clearly. Thank you very much. All right, this is for legislative candidates. Would you support clarifications and/or amendments to the stream access law to prevent this type of privatization scheme in the future?
That's a tough question for me because I have not read, since I do not fish, I have not read what the laws are or what the amendments are. Sometimes it would depend what they were that for me to support or not support something like that. As I said, public access is very important to me. So whatever amendments would address that would be what I would support. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, would you support clarifications and/or amendments to the stream access law to prevent this type of privatization scheme in the future?
Well, I would agree with Ian a little bit that you got to know what the question is and what the amendments are. But I'll just say that the stream access law has been around for a long time, and I support it. It's been vetted through the court, and I think it's solid. Probably don't want to mess with that too much because you'll open up a can of worms that maybe you have unintended consequences for. So I think the stream access laws worked well for all people, and we need to continue to do that. The river is public, and I'm not sure how you can stop boats from one fence line to the next unless they get out. I mean, so that's what the stream access law does. It allows the people to get access to the stream, and then they can move down it. And as long as they keep within the high water mark, they're safe. And that's what it should be. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, we are going to, at this point, move on to some questions that are coming from our listeners in the audience here. Let me go right to the first. All right, this first question is for everyone. We are going to start with the commissioners, and looking at my rotation here, it looks like Mr. Allahnds, you are first. Okay. Montana has a very high rate of suicide. Mental health issues need to be addressed in our state and communities. How will you support efforts to increase mental health services and suicide prevention? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay. Well, that's something, that we work with really diligently. We've got some good people on our mental health advisory council, but it's an issue that Mr. Walsh or Mr. Root will have to address. The funding for those things are being cut all the time. You know, in Madison County, if someone needs some real mental help through a professional, you know, it's not readily available in Madison County. We're trying to work through things like that. You know, they did a survey here, and Mental Health Board did, for people on what they thought about possibly like some crisis housing for domestic abuse, things like that, or somebody that's having a tough time getting them out of abusive situation or that. Those are things we're looking at. But it all boils down to a lot of funding. I mean, we work with some folks out of Butte trying to help folks, but it's a real crisis and it's getting worse. And somehow we need to find some funding. I mean, I don't know whether someday they're going to have to dip into the cold trust funds or whatever to fund some of this stuff, but suicide and things like that, alcoholism, drug use, it's getting to be a major problem. And like I said, we work diligently. We've had super members on those boards and they work very hard. We got, I think, 3 or 4 crisis counselors that can help mentor someone for the period. But as far as, like I say, transferring them out to a facility where there's actually the people on staff to help them, we've got to either go to Butte or to Bozeman, and there's one in Livingston, and it's a long ways, or Idaho Falls. So big issues. Just going to take a lot of time, and as with everything, it takes money to fund it, but we need the help. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thompson, Montana's very high rate of suicide. Mental health issues need to be addressed in our state and communities. How will you support efforts to increase mental health services and suicide prevention? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Takes a little while to get the unmute button off. Anyway, well, Dan pretty well covered it. He is probably on the ground floor a lot more than I am in the know about this. I am basically in the know of it, being a veteran myself, that the vets make us very well aware of it. Every time we go in for a health checkup and everything, one of the first things they do, and when you call in to make an appointment, they always have an ad on there about mental health and everything, the suicide rate. So yes, I think we need to pay attention to it. We need to help out where we can and just do the best we can until it gets to be someplace along the line, somebody will come up with a better way to address all this and work it all together between health and mental health and everything. And then we'll have it all covered underneath one department, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will move on to our district candidates, House district candidates. Mr. Root, you are first on this. Do you need me to repeat the question, all or in part?
No, it's okay. Veterans Administration has a great deal of responsibility because the vets make up a large portion of our populace as well as a large portion of our suicides. I don't believe that they've done as good a job as they could. On a local level, my wife has been on the Mental Health Advisory Council for many years, has helped institute programs in both the Madison Valley Hospital and the Ruby Valley Hospital to address mental illness. I believe that getting those programs started has cut down the suicide rate, but there's no way to know. It's a big problem. I have trouble understanding how people get to the point where ending their life is their best option. I wish I could. It's a serious problem. It's probably, from a health standpoint, putting COVID aside, from Madison County, it's probably the biggest health problem that we have. I think that funding, as Mr. Allahnds said, would probably be the best. coming from the state, maybe with some federal grants. That would be great to work through our two good hospitals as far as screening. Every person who goes to those hospitals has to answer several questions. Have you harmed yourself? Do you plan on harming yourself? It's a very difficult thing when people hide, and they do hide. It's not an intractable problem, but there are obstacles. Thank you, Corey.
Okay, thank you for that. Great question there to discuss this. Next question, going to go to Mr. Walsh. Do you need to repeat all or part of it?
No, I'm good. Thanks,
Okay.
Curtis. Yeah, I like all of the people before. It is an issue. There's no doubt about it, and I've tried to address that. Actually, I spent on an hour Zoom conference just before this meeting. It was called Elevate Behavioral Health, put on by the several organizations in Bozeman, and discussing where we're at with behavioral health, how the funding is working. Obviously, funding is an issue, and what can happen from the state legislature and then the federal, and then maybe even some local dollars. And so I think that people are aware of it. There's groups out there that are actively working on it. Here locally, I know I'm on the hospital board. Ian's wife is involved in on the committee, but we have hired a person that can work with people and those type of things with their struggles, and we felt that was a big need. The providers said that was something that they see on a regular basis, that they just needed help getting that addressed. And so it's partly being addressed, but there's probably more to do. I think Eli talked about the veterans. We do need to make sure that those veterans are get the help that they need, whether they need to get to Helena, or they need to have teleconference or telemedicine to work through their issues. That's very important. So I think that it is a crisis. We need to figure out more to do. And I think, again, we just need to open the box and work and find out those solutions. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. Thank you. We have 3 questions left on the that I'm getting from the group chat. I'm going to try to get through them all. I just want to let everybody know we are going to cut this off at 6:55 so that we can do our sign off and make sure that everybody's schedules are still kept. This next question from the audience is for House District 71 candidates. And we will start with Mr. Walsh first on this. The question is, sir, do you support using tax dollars to help fund private schools? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, the question is, support tax dollars for private schools? No, I don't. I think that tax dollars need to go to public schools. Even though the Supreme Court has ruled that the most recent legislation for $150 tax credit, which is basically actually money that doesn't get to the schools, disappears. And so I think that's not a lot, but I think it's opens up a path that could increase that over a period of time. So I think we have a great public education system. We need to support that. I do support people that want to homeschool their kids, that they want to send them to a private school. They have those alternatives to do. But I think as a society that we need to support a strong public education system and make it accountable. And I think that our Montana schools do that. And I think that we need to continue to have local control and do those things. I don't discourage any of those alternatives to public education, but I don't think they should be funded by tax dollars.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Root,
Yes, sir.
do you support using tax dollars to help fund private schools?
Absolutely not. I agree with Mr. Walsh that tax dollars should go to public schools. If people want to send their kids to religious schools, private schools, or home schools, they have that right, but they need to fund that themselves. I'm aware of the Supreme Court decision and I disagree with it, but I'm not in charge of that. But I believe that we should increase funding to public schools. The teachers need to get better salaries. They are under incredible stress due to this COVID experience. They need to be treated with a great deal more respect than they are. The people who work in schools need to have their salaries increased. I mentioned before, I'm for public, free public higher education, because though our schools may be doing a good job, they could do better. And they could do better by sending more kids to college and universities in Montana. We have a pretty extensive public higher education network throughout the state that they could go to whatever facility they wish, but not for private. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. This next question is going to the commissioner candidates. We will start with Mr. Thompson. The question is this: what are your feelings regarding the open meeting law? Do you think all jobs should be posted, whether in the county or in the public?
I believe I got the question right. If I support the open meeting law, jobs should be, yes, I think that all the jobs, and I believe it is required that for a public job, it is supposed to be an open meeting. It is supposed to be advertised. And that's one of my platforms, the openness and transparency. That is what not, that is not what has been happening. They should be an advertisement description and advertise the job description, then hire from that. Have an interview, have an open meeting interview. Right now, it would be probably hard to say that there'd be an open meeting for the interview, because that could be maybe hard to pull off, but I guess we'll have to try it if it comes to that. Right now, they just have a hiring and interviewing committee, and then the commissioners take the advice of the interviewing committee. And I believe that it is there to be used right now, and they should follow through with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Allahnds, question is, what are your feelings regarding the open meeting law? Do you think all jobs should be posted, whether in the county or in the public?
Yeah, I support the open meeting law, and I think we do a pretty good job of it. I guess one thing that's brought a lot of attention to the hiring was the chief administrative officer's position. But as I said, statute, I think it's Chapter 7, Part 3, 415, Madison, the county commissioners have the right, the ability, shall or may, hire as many administrative assistants as they need. Now, the chief administrative officer that we've got, there's been a lot of talk about her wage scale and all that, but I can guarantee you the woman the chief administrative officer is very thorough. There's been talk about we don't need somebody like that. Well, I can guarantee you with 200 employees, you do need somebody like that. That's the only one that we really haven't done the advertising, because that statute says that we got away with it and that we could do it. And then also our handbook policy, our old one, 2013 version, states that the commissioners have the right to delegate authority to a qualified person. So we did that. Now, that's probably part of the reason we got in trouble. And like I said before, we didn't do it wrong. We probably could have done it better. Yeah, I do. But we have a definite system for advertisement. We advertise and we advertise. And then we have our interviewing committee, and we have a scoring sheet that we score, and everybody scores. And then we take the highest score and we evaluate everything. And we have a system so that if somebody doesn't get the job and they can test who we gave it to, we can back that up legally. So other than the chief administrative officer, which by law we were allowed to do, we advertise and we advertise well. And the chief administrative officer and our HR department do a bang up job on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Our last question for the evening is for our House District 71 candidates. I will start the question off with Mr. Root. And the question is this: there will be huge pressure in Helena to work only with your party. Will you commit to working in a bipartisan fashion? And if so, how will you actively reach across the aisle? You have 2 minutes, sir.
A lot depends on who has the majority. In the past, the Republicans have dominated the legislature, and they have not been interested in reaching across the aisle. The majority has the responsibility to do that. I would certainly reach out, because I have a lot of issues that are statewide and a lot of issues that have national implications. And I believe that it is better for the state if the legislature works as a group of 100. However, that hasn't been the case in the past. The Republicans have been heavy-handed and rammed things through that without Democratic input. We were lucky to get Medicaid expansion. I would hope to increase Medicaid expansion so that more people in the state of Montana would be covered, and that our local hospitals would have a base for increased funding that would come from the federal government. But it's up to them. If I'm in the majority, then I would be glad to talk to my Republican colleagues. I would lead my group. I wouldn't be as heavy-handed as the Republicans have been towards their Democratic colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Walsh, there will be huge pressure in Helena to work only with your party. Will you commit to working in a bipartisan fashion? If so, how will you actively reach across the aisle?
Well, yeah, I'm elected by the voters of House District number 71, not by the Republican Party. I put an R behind my name because that's where philosophically I think I fall into. I have no problem working with Democrats, independents, libertarians, or whatever, as long as we get a common solution that's for the greater good. So, no, I mean, I think that we, as legislators, it's our responsibility to work for our constituents and work for the betterment of the state of Montana. So I think that we need to do that. I would disagree a little bit with Mr. Root that there is Republicans that do reach across the aisle and have to make things better for the state of Montana. So I think that there is the party loyalty, but there's also people that I think like myself, and I think even people get beat up a little bit because they don't belong and march with the party leadership. And I'm not going to be that guy. So I might get beat up a little bit by the party leadership because I'm going to do what I think is right for Madison County and House District 11 or 71 and for the state. So that's my philosophy because these are the people that elect me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, this will conclude our forum. Before I pass the microphone over to my boss, I just wanted to thank you all for participating in this. I definitely want to thank all of those who attended. We had 33 attendees, and I think that that's great. Those people are going to be the informed voters who know what their candidates stand for. Living in Jefferson County, I'm kind of thankful because all four of you did an admirable job presenting your platforms and speaking to your potential constituency. And they have a tough choice ahead of them. So thank you for your candor and for your responses and for throwing your hat in the ring. It's a thankless job to represent the public, and all four of you who are willing to step up to the plate and do that, I salute you. So again, thank you all very much for your words, and I will pass it over to the better half of the Koenig family, Mrs. Corey Koenig.
Thank you, Curtis.
Hello, and thank you all so much for participating. Audience, thank you. Candidates, thank you very much, and for your continued work throughout this election season. This is very timely. Ballots are going in the mail tomorrow. So just a reminder from Kathleen Mummy, Madison County Clerk and Recorder, ballots go in the mail tomorrow. I just kind of want to go over some of the voting deadlines and protocol this year since it is different. The registration deadline this year is October 26th. Due to COVID, this was part of the governor's directive. So they can accept registrations by mail and in person, but they are promoting mail for obvious reasons until the 26th. It's a very important change. Typically, this is 30 days before the election. So you can print off the voter registration form from the Secretary of State's website, or you can call the Madison County Clerk and Recorder. When to expect your mail-in ballot? They will all be going in the mail tomorrow to all active voters. So expect them within the following week. Please remember that Monday, the post office is closed for Columbus Day. So give an extra day of leeway in there. How and when to reach out if your ballot does not come. If the ballot does not reach the voter within 10 days or so, please call the office, 843-4270. Again, 843-4270. The voter will need to fill out a form so that we can void the first ballot and issue a new one. So that needs to be done before the 26th. Other voting options. Voters may drop off their voted ballots here at the Madison County Admin Building. There will be signs out front. They may also wait and vote the ballot here. But we want voters to remember the reason for choosing mail is to keep the crowds down and our voters and workers as safe as possible. Social distancing and masks will be required if voting at the admin building and voters choose to deliver their ballots in person. The office is recommending voting completely by mail and sending your ballot back as soon as you can. For any information, please call the Clerk and Recorder's Office, 842-4270, or email clerkandrecorder@madisoncountymontana.gov or kmummy@madisoncountymontana.gov. There is old information out there and there is misinformation. So, best piece of advice, please watch local news and read local newspapers. The Clerk and Recorder's Office has been putting weekly articles in about how, when, and where to vote. So please keep reading those. They are accurate for our voting. You can vote in person by appearing at the public meeting. You can late register and vote as long as they have resided in the county for 30 days prior to the election, by appearing at the public meeting room in person between October 27th at noon and November 2nd, and beginning again on Election Day, November 3rd until 8 p.m. But they certainly hope you won't wait that long to register. All processes including watching the ballots being tabulated are open to the public. This is just a difficult year because of the social distancing requirements. But the public meeting room has a nice big patio and window doors. Again, these dates will be in the legal notices of the Madisonian as required by law. So they're there until the election. Remind voters, so voters, if you are active registered, you do not need to send an absentee request. You will receive a ballot. Again, if you don't receive it within a week, please give them a call. You can check your status, but the quickest way is myvoterpage.mt.gov. Thank you for listening. Again, thank you, everybody. It's been great having you on. Great to hear from everybody. And thank you for your great questions as well. So, it will be posted. This meeting was recorded. It will be posted on the Madisonian website, madisoniannews.com, by tomorrow morning. Fingers crossed. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.